In front of our entire church congregation, she announced the wonderful news. "My mother is moving to the city," she chirped, "and Grace has been kind enough to offer her home while she takes a much-needed rest at a lovely senior facility. She was lying in the house of God to steal my home for her mother. Hello and welcome. It means a lot to have you here. Let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. Now, let's get into the story. My life, the one everyone in this Atlanta neighborhood knows as Mama Grace's life, usually moves like the Ocmulgee River in late summer, slow, steady, and deep. I'm 69 years old and I've earned my quiet. I like the rhythm of my days, tending the collard greens in my backyard, the slow sip of sweet tea on the porch swing, the murmur of prayers in the evening quiet. But peace, I've learned, is a fragile thing. It can be shattered in a single heartbeat by the sound of a car door slamming shut with too much purpose. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my daughter-in-law, Latrina, pulled her white Lexus up to my curb. The car was as loud and out of place on my quiet street as she was. It gleamed under the Georgia sun, a sterile, arrogant thing. She got out, all sharp angles in a business suit that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check. She carried a leather portfolio and a smile that never, not once in the 10 years I've known her, managed to reach her eyes. She didn't knock. Latrina never knocks. The front door is always unlocked, a habit from the decades when this house was a safe harbor for children who had nowhere else to go. She breezed in, bringing a gust of expensive perfume that smelled like chemicals and ambition. "Grace, there you are," she said, her voice bright and brittle. She calls me Grace, never Mama Grace. To her, the mama is an unearned, folksy title she refuses to validate. I was in the kitchen, wiping down the counters. "Latrina, this is a surprise. Andre didn't say you were coming by." "Oh, it was a last-minute thing," she said, setting her portfolio on my clean kitchen table. It landed with a soft, definitive thud. "Andre's swamped at work. You know how it is." I knew all right. I knew my son worked 60-hour weeks trying to keep up with the life Latrina had designed for them, a life of country club memberships and European vacations that left him perpetually exhausted. She looked around my home, her eyes doing a quick, dismissive inventory. I've lived in this house for over 30 years. Every scratch on the floor, every faded patch on the floral wallpaper tells a story. Her eyes saw none of them. They only saw a property, an asset. "So, I have some news," she said, tapping the portfolio. "It's wonderful news, really. A solution." I just waited, my hand still holding the damp cloth. I've worked in social services my entire adult life. I've sat across from desperate mothers, angry fathers, and broken children. I know the look of someone about to deliver bad news they've convinced themselves is for your own good. "My parents," she announced, beaming that hollow smile. "They've decided to move to Atlanta to be closer to us. Isn't that wonderful?" "That's nice for you, dear," I said, and I meant it. Family should be close. It is, but their house sold faster than we expected. They'll be here next week, and they need a place to land while they find something permanent. She paused for dramatic effect. "So they'll be moving in here." The words just hung there in the air, between the smell of her perfume and the faint, lingering scent of the lemon cleaner I use. She didn't ask. She didn't suggest. She stated it as a fact, as if she were announcing the weather. "And we've found the most perfect place for you, Grace," she continued, flipping open the portfolio to reveal a glossy brochure. The name on the front was printed in a gentle, looping script. Silver Creek Senior Living. It's a 5-star facility. They have water aerobics, a library, round-the-clock care. It's time you let someone take care of you for a change. She slid the brochure across the table. This house, it's just too much for one person. All this space. Too much space. I thought of the 63 children who had passed through these doors over the years. I thought of the pallets we'd lay out in the living room on cold nights when a family down the street lost their heat. I thought of the laughter that used to echo in these empty rooms. I could almost smell the ghost of the thousands of pans of cornbread I'd baked in my oven, a warm, welcoming scent for children whose own homes were filled with a different kind of cold. This house wasn't empty. It was just quiet right now. Latrina must have mistaken my silence for compliance. Her voice softened into a tone of fake sympathy that set my teeth on edge. I know it's a big change, but it's time for Andre's real family to take over and manage things. You've done enough. That was the line. Real family. The invisible, indelible line she had drawn between me and the son I raised since he was 5 years old. She didn't know a thing. She didn't understand that the children I raised were not just a line item on my social work resume. They were my family. They were now doctors and lawyers and business owners and city councilmen. They were a force. I looked at her, at this sharp, polished woman who saw my life's work as a dusty relic to be cleared away. I gave a slow, deliberate nod. My face, I'm sure, was a calm mask. But inside my head, a Rolodex of names and numbers was already spinning. I see, I said, my voice even. Latrina snapped her portfolio shut, victory shining in her eyes. Good. I'm glad you're being sensible about this. The movers will be here Friday morning. She walked out as quickly as she came in, leaving the scent of her ambition and the glossy lie of silver creaks on my kitchen table. She left thinking she had won. She had no idea she'd just woken a sleeping lion. The disrespect wasn't new. It had been a low, constant hum in the background of my life ever since Latrina married Andre. It was in the little things. The way she'd correct my grammar at family dinners. The way she'd buy me expensive, useless gifts that were more about showing off her money than knowing what I'd actually like. But her favorite weapon was words, and her favorite target was my motherhood. You just watched him, honey. That doesn't make you his mother. She'd said that to me maybe 5 years ago at a family barbecue. She said it with a dismissive little laugh, as if it were a self-evident truth. Andre was standing right there, holding a plate of ribs, and he flinched like he'd been struck. I had taken him in when his own mother couldn't, when he was a scared little boy with eyes too old for his face. I'd held him through night terrors, taught him to read, and sat in the front row at his high school graduation with tears streaming down my face. But to Latrina, all of that was just a long-term babysitting gig. Biology was the only thing that counted in her ledger. To her, I was just a simple old woman living on a modest pension, a relic. She saw the old Cadillac in my driveway, the one I kept because it was paid for and ran just fine, and she saw poverty. She never bothered to ask about the wall in my hallway, the one covered from floor to ceiling with photographs, graduation pictures, wedding invitations, birth announcements, dozens of smiling faces, a tapestry of lives I'd had a hand in weaving. To her, it was just clutter. A few months ago, the cruelty got bolder. We were at her house for Thanksgiving, a sterile place of gray walls and sharp-edged furniture. As I was helping clear the table, she'd made an announcement to her own parents, who were also there. "When Grace's time comes," she'd said, scraping turkey into the trash, "this house of hers will finally pass to blood relatives, as it should." Andre dropped his fork. It clattered on the porcelain plate with a sound like a gunshot in the quiet dining room. He was mortified. "Latrina?" She just shrugged, unapologetic. "What? I'm just being practical. It's about securing Andre's inheritance." That night, Andre called me, his voice thick with shame and tears. "Mama, I am so sorry. I don't know what gets into her." I'd soothed him like I always did, telling him it was all right, that I understood. But what I understood was that my son was weak, caught in the undertow of a woman he couldn't control. This latest move, though, was a whole new level of audacity. Bringing the brochures for the nursing home. She'd been planning this for a while. She'd probably shown them to Andre, painting a picture of a carefree retirement for me, all while calculating the square footage of my house. She'd probably described Silver Creeks as if it were a 5-star resort, a gift she was bestowing upon me. She probably even believed it herself. But I saw right through it. I saw the greed masquerading as concern. Latrina thought she was dealing with a frail old woman who had outlived her usefulness. She was making a business decision, clearing out an old asset to make way for a new one. She didn't get it. This house isn't just brick and mortar. It's the foundation. It's the very ground upon which a community was built, a community she couldn't see. She thought she was just moving an old lady. She had no idea she was trying to bulldoze a landmark. And the children who grew up within these walls, well, they tend to be very protective of their home. Every floorboard in this house has a story Latrina is too blind to read. She walks through these rooms and sees outdated fixtures and worn carpets. I walk through them and see a legacy written in invisible ink. The living room, where she probably envisions her mother's tasteless, oversized furniture, is where a skinny 10-year-old boy named Rashad Vance sat every night after school and read his first chapter book. His own mama worked the night shift as a nurse, and he'd come here straight from school. I'd make him a grilled cheese sandwich, and he'd sit in that big armchair by the window, sounding out the big words. He told me once that the light from that window was the best reading light in the world. Today, he's Rashad Vance, Esquire, one of the sharpest corporate lawyers in the state of Georgia. He still sends me a bouquet of yellow roses every year on the anniversary of the day he finished The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The kitchen, the very room where Latrina laid down her verdict, is where her mother will supposedly cook her bland, healthy meals. But this kitchen is sacred ground. It's where a shy, withdrawn girl named Tamika Price learned to bake my peach cobbler. She came to me after her parents' messy divorce, a little ghost who barely spoke. But in my kitchen, working with her hands, she found her voice. She found a passion. Today, she's the owner of Tamika's Kitchen, the most popular soul food restaurant in all of Atlanta. People line up around the block for a taste of the very cobbler she first perfected at my stove. And the guest room, the one Latrina has so generously assigned to her parents, was a sanctuary. It was where a terrified 6-year-old girl named Imani Wade slept for 6 months while her father recovered from a bad accident and her family got back on their feet. I used to sit on the edge of her bed and tell her stories until she fell asleep, promising her that the world was not as scary as it seemed. She grew up wanting to make the world less scary for other children. Today she is Dr. Imani Wade, the head of the pediatric wing at Emory University Hospital. Latrina sees an old house. I see the launching pad for dreams. This legacy isn't just in the past, it's alive. Right now, as the sun sets outside my window, a neighborhood boy named Deshaun is sitting at my kitchen table, the same one Latrina's brochure defiled, doing his math homework. His single mother is working a double shift and she knows he's safe here. He's fed here. He's loved here. Latrina thinks this is about real estate, about bloodlines and inheritance. She's wrong. This house is a living, breathing testament, built not on money, but on something far more powerful: infinite patience and unconditional love. She sees an asset. I see a promise I made to every single child who ever walked through that door. You will always have a place to come home. And my children always do. The so-called family council happened the next evening. Latrina, of course, had orchestrated it. She called it a simple dinner, a chance for her parents to spend some time with me before the big move. The lie was so effortless for her. I spent the afternoon making my famous fried chicken, mashed potatoes with gravy, and collard greens, simmered with smoked turkey. If I was going to be judged, it would be in my own home, with the scent of a meal made with love hanging in the air. Let the contrast be as sharp as possible. Her parents, Clarence and Loretta, arrived looking deeply uncomfortable. They are old-school people from Macon, raised on respect for their elders. You could see the conflict in their eyes. They believed in the sanctity of bloodlines. Yes, but they also believed in decency. Loretta handed me a pot of orchids, avoiding my gaze. "These are lovely, Grace," she murmured. Clarence just gave a tight nod, his eyes darting around my living room as if looking for an escape route. We sat at my dining room table, the one Andre and I had refinished together one summer when he was 15. The food, I have to say, was perfect. Even Andre, who had been a ball of silent anxiety since Latrina's visit, seemed to relax a little as he took his first bite. For a few minutes, there was peace. There was the familiar, comforting sound of a family sharing a meal. And then, right as I was about to offer everyone more iced tea, Latrina cleared her throat. She pulled that same leather portfolio from her handbag and placed it next to her plate, a black omen on my lace tablecloth. "Well," she began, her voice dripping with manufactured sweetness, "since we're all here, I think it's a good time to finalize the plans." Clarence shifted in his chair. Loretta stared intently at a spot of gravy on her plate. "Mama Grace has been thinking about making a change for a while now," Latrina lied, looking directly at me with a gaze that was both a warning and a challenge. "She's ready to have fewer responsibilities, to be looked after. We've found the most wonderful place." She opened the portfolio and once again presented the glossy brochure for Silver, Creeks. She spoke of it like a real estate agent selling a slice of paradise, her words smooth and practiced. She mentioned the scheduled activities, the on-site nurse, the landscaped gardens. She made it sound like a permanent vacation. "And the best part," she said, her voice lowering conspiratorially, "is that the house will stay in the family. It's important to keep assets like this with blood relatives." The silence that followed was thick and heavy. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Andre's fork slipped from his fingers and clattered onto his plate. The sound was obscenely loud. "Latrina, we didn't agree to this," he said, his voice a strained whisper. He looked from her to me, his face a mask of misery. Latrina didn't even flinch. She turned to him, her smile gone, replaced by a look of cold, hard resolve. "Let's be honest, sweetie," she said, her voice low and cutting. "Grace did a wonderful thing for you. We are all grateful. But she is not your blood. She's not your mother. Biology is what matters when it comes to legacy." Every word was a perfectly aimed dart, and they all hit their mark. The room felt like it had lost all its air. Loretta looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Even Clarence, a man who rarely showed emotion, looked down at his hands, ashamed. They were her parents, but they were not her accomplices. Not in this, not with this much undisguised cruelty. Latrina, however, was unmoved. She had an objective, and sentimentality was just an obstacle. She looked at her watch. "The movers will be here on Friday morning at 10 o'clock, she announced to the silent table. "I've already paid the deposit. This is settled." The moment Latrina's Lexus pulled away from the curb, Andre fell apart. He paced my living room like a caged animal, running his hands through his hair, his face pale with sweat. "Mama, I'm sorry. I swear to God, I didn't know she was going to do that. I didn't know she would be so... He couldn't find the word. "Cruel?" I offered, my voice calm. "Yes, I tried to talk to her, but she doesn't listen. She just decides things, and I'm supposed to go along." He collapsed onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. His shoulders shook with silent sobs. I sat down next to him and put my arm around him, just like I had when he was 7 and fell off his bike. I held my son, a grown man of 40, and let him cry. There was no anger in my heart for him, only a deep, aching pity. He was a good man with a weak spine. After a few minutes, I stood up. My resolve had set, hard as winter ground. "Don't you worry, baby," I said, my voice firm now, pulling him from his despair. "She just doesn't know who she's dealing with." I walked to the hallway and knelt before the old cedar chest that sits beneath the window. The lid creaked as I opened it, releasing the sharp, clean scent of decades of stored memories. This was my armory, my war room. Andre watched me, his expression confused, as I began to pull things out. Not old blankets or winter clothes, but heavy photo albums, wooden boxes filled with letters, and stacks of business cards tied with ribbon. "You see this?" I said, opening an album to a picture of a skinny boy with big glasses, holding up a spelling bee trophy. Me, younger, with my arm around him. "Remember Rashad?" I reached into a box and pulled out an embossed business card. I handed it to Andre. He read it aloud, his voice full of disbelief. "Rashad Vance, Esquire, senior partner at Vance, Carter and Associates." I pulled out another photo, a teenage girl with braces, proudly holding a diploma. "And Imani." I handed him another card, this one from Emory Hospital. "Dr. Imani Wade, head of pediatrics." I kept going. A card for Tamika's Kitchen, a campaign flyer for City Councilman Michael Carter, a glossy headshot from a woman who was now a lead anchor on a news station in Chicago. "Mama, I knew you helped people, but I didn't know." "These aren't just people I helped, Andre. These are my children. This is our family." I showed him wedding invitations where my name was listed as mother of the bride. I showed him birth announcements with notes scrawled on the back. "Meet your new grandbaby, Grandma Grace." I showed him dozens of Christmas cards, a vibrant, sprawling map of the lives that had started right here. In this house, Latrina saw as nothing more than a piece of real estate. My phone buzzed on the end table. I had sent a simple text message 5 minutes earlier to one person. It just said, "Imani, call me when you can. It's important." It was her. "Hey, Mama Grace." Her voice was warm and cheerful. "Everything okay?" I took a deep breath. "Not exactly, honey. I need your help." I told her everything, calmly, factually, without tears or hysterics. I told her about Latrina's visit, the nursing home brochure, the dinner, and the final ultimatum. On the other end of the line, there was a profound and terrifying silence, the kind of silence that comes before a storm breaks. When Imani finally spoke, her voice was completely different. It was cold. It was steel. It was the voice of a doctor in charge of a life-or-death situation. "Has she lost her goddamn mind?" she said, the words clipped and precise. There was no emotion, only a chilling, focused rage. "Give me her full name. Latrina what?" I told her. "Okay," Imani said, and I could hear the sound of typing in the background. "Okay, I'm on it. You call Rashad, right now. Then call Tamika. Tell them to clear their schedules. The family is coming together." Andre was staring at me, his eyes wide with a dawning comprehension, with awe. He wasn't just watching his old mother make a few phone calls. He was watching a queen summon her court. He was watching a general call her soldiers home. If there is one place on this earth that is my sanctuary, it's Zion Hope Baptist Church. I have been a member for 40 years. My joys and my sorrows have been laid bare within its walls. So when Latrina chose to make her next move there, I knew it wasn't a coincidence. It was a calculated act of war, meant to isolate me in the heart of my own community. It was Wednesday night Bible study. The air in the fellowship hall was warm, filled with the gentle murmur of Scripture and the scent of old hymn books and coffee. Reverend Wallace was guiding us through the book of Isaiah. It was peaceful. It was holy. Then the doors at the back of the hall swung open. Latrina stood there, flanked by her parents. She was dressed in an expensive cream-colored suit, holding that damnable portfolio like a weapon. She waited for a pause in the Reverend's teaching, and then her voice cut through the sacred quiet. "Excuse me, Reverend Wallace. My apologies for the interruption." Every head in the room turned, 30 pairs of eyes fixed on her. This was not how things were done at Zion Hope. "I have a brief announcement to make," she continued, walking down the center aisle, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. "It concerns a beloved member of our congregation, Sister Grace." A ripple of confusion went through the room. People looked at me with concern. I just sat there, my Bible open in my lap, and I waited. Latrina stopped at the front, turning to face the congregation. She arranged her face into a mask of deep, sorrowful concern. It was a masterful performance. As many of you know, Grace has dedicated her life to helping others, she began, her voice filled with crocodile tears. But in her advanced years, she now requires a level of professional care that is beyond what we can provide at home. It has fallen to her real family to make the difficult but correct and loving decision for her future. You could have heard a pin drop. People were looking at each other, then back at me. They saw me every Sunday. I organized the bake sales. I taught Sunday school for 20 years. The idea that I was suddenly infirm and in need of professional care was absurd. Deacon Hayes, a mountain of a man with a gentle heart who had known me since my first day at this church, slowly rose to his feet. His voice rumbled through the hall. "Daughter, what are you talking about? Sister Grace is a pillar of this church, of this entire community. What care is it you think she's lacking?" Latrina's mask of sympathy flickered. Annoyance flashed in her eyes before being replaced by pity. "With all due respect, Deacon, you only see the surface," she said dismissively. "You see the woman who shows up on Sunday. You don't see the daily struggles. Her important work helping children is long over. It's time to make way for the next chapter." A collective gasp went through the room. To suggest that a church elder's time was over, to speak of them in the past tense while they were sitting right there, it was an insult of the highest order. It was a public shaming. She had laid the groundwork of lies, and now she delivered the killing blow. "We have made all the arrangements," she announced, her voice ringing with finality. "The movers will be at her house on Friday. The games are over." She stood there, defiant, as whispers of outrage turned into a low, angry buzz. She had turned my sanctuary into a courtroom and declared me incompetent in front of my entire church family. She thought she had cornered me. She thought she had silenced me. She was wrong. For a long moment after Latrina's declaration echoed in the fellowship hall, the only sound was the shocked silence of my church family. Then, slowly, I closed my Bible, the soft thud of the leather cover seeming to break the spell. I pushed my chair back and stood up. All eyes were on me. Latrina's triumphant smirk began to falter, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. She expected tears. She expected a scene. She did not expect the calm that had settled over me. "Latrina is right about one thing," I said, my voice not loud but clear and steady enough to carry to the back of the room. "The games are indeed over." I didn't say another word. I simply picked up my purse, gave a small nod to Reverend Wallace, and walked out of the church, my head held high. I could feel the collective gaze of the congregation on my back, a wave of support and love that was more powerful than any weapon Latrina could ever wield. The next morning, the storm broke. It didn't arrive with thunder and lightning, but with the quiet hum of fiber optic cables and cellular networks. At 9 a.m. sharp, there was a conference call. On the line was myself, Dr. Imani Wade, Rashad Vance Esquire, and City Councilman Michael Carter. I sat at my kitchen table, the one where Latrina had delivered her ultimatum, and laid out the facts one more time. The silence on the other end was heavy. Then Rashad's voice, smooth and dangerous as a drawn razor, filled the void. "Nobody," he said, the word clipped and cold. "Do you all hear me? Nobody on God's green earth gets to do this to Mama Grace. Nobody." "Consider my calendar cleared," Michael Carter said. "What do you need, Mama Grace? A zoning variance, a protest permit, a public statement on the steps of City Hall?" "No, baby," I said. "Nothing like that. I just need my family." "Then that's what you'll have," Imani declared. "I'm creating a group chat, now. The name is Grace's Guardians. I'm adding everyone I have a number for. Spread the word. The message is simple. Code red. Mama needs us." And just like that, the call went out. The message spread like wildfire through a network built over 30 years of love and support. In a sterile corporate boardroom in New York City, a tech CEO excused himself from a meeting. In a bustling emergency room in Houston, a surgeon handed her caseload to a colleague. On the tarmac at O'Hare Airport in Chicago, an airline pilot requested an immediate shift change. Last-minute flights to Atlanta were booked. Car rentals were secured. Hotel rooms near my neighborhood were snapped up. The children were coming home. "Everyone needs to be in place by Thursday evening," Imani commanded in the chat, her messages coming in rapid-fire succession. She was organizing them like a military general deploying her troops. "We move on Friday morning. We will be ready." By Wednesday afternoon, the change on my quiet, tree-lined street was visible. A black Mercedes sedan, the kind that whispers of quiet power, was parked behind my old Cadillac. Then came a sleek Lexus SUV, followed by a pearl-white Range Rover. Neighbors peeked out from behind their curtains, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and confusion. My little house, usually so unassuming, was suddenly the epicenter of something big. By Thursday evening, the house was full. It overflowed with laughter, with hugs that lasted for minutes at a time, with the joyful noise of a family reunited. The air was thick with the scent of roasted chicken, baked macaroni and cheese, and sweet potato pie. Tamika had arrived and, as was her way, had taken over my kitchen, bringing with her enough food to feed an army. And an army, it seemed, was exactly what had gathered. These were not just successful people. These were my children. They had come back to the foundation, to the starting place, to defend their queen, and the plan they devised was simple, elegant, and devastating in its power. There would be no shouting. There would be no angry confrontation. They would simply show Latrina and the world what a real family looks like. That Thursday night, my home buzzed with a powerful, loving energy it hadn't felt in years. It was a living, breathing thing. Tamika, a whirlwind of grace and efficiency in my kitchen, directed a team of helpers, turning out pans of food while trading stories with a software engineer from Silicon Valley, who I once taught how to tie his shoes. In the living room, Rashad sat at the small wooden desk where he'd diagrammed sentences for his English homework 25 years ago. Now he was hunched over a yellow legal pad, his fountain pen scratching across the page as he outlined legal points, his brow furrowed in concentration. He wasn't just my son, he was my counsel. Stories flowed like a river, washing away the ugliness of the past few days. Michael Carter, the city councilman, had everyone roaring with laughter. "Remember when Mama Grace made us all memorize Maya Angelou's Still I Rise before we could go out and play?" he boomed. "She said we had to know the power of our own voices before the world tried to take them from us." "Well, it looks like it worked," laughed a woman who was now a tenured professor at Spelman College. Dr. Imani Wade, the fierce organizer of this entire operation, sat on the floor, leaning against the sofa, showing pictures on her phone to a small, rapt audience. "This is my daughter," she said, her voice soft with pride. "Her name is Grace. She's 5, and she knows everything there is to know about the woman who gave her mother a future." My son, Andre, moved through the house like a man in a dream. His heart was a pendulum, swinging between a profound shame for his wife's actions and an overwhelming, newly discovered pride in the woman who raised him. He knew these people as children, the lanky boy who was always borrowing books, the quiet girl who loved to bake, but to see them now, all together, as titans of their industries. It was a revelation. He stood in the corner of the dining room, listening as a man in a crisp pilot's uniform explained how Mama Grace had been the only person who didn't laugh when he said he wanted to fly. She had bought him his first model airplane. He watched as a woman who designed video games for a living explained how Grace had saved for 6 months to buy her first computer, an old clunky machine that had opened up the entire world to her. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a living testament to a legacy. It was a choir of voices rising to say the same thing. This woman built us. Each person there was a brick in the foundation of the house Latrina had tried to condemn. She thought she was attacking a lonely old woman, a relic to be put out to pasture. She had no idea that her foolish, greedy act would be the very thing that summoned an entire army to stand in her way. Friday morning arrived with a clear, bright sky, the kind of beautiful Georgia morning that promises peace. But on my street, the air was electric with tension. It looked less like a quiet residential block and more like a convention for the black elite. By 9:30, they were all in place. More than 60 of my children stood on my perfectly manicured front lawn. It was the most beautiful, powerful sight I had ever seen. They had come in what they called their uniforms. Imani and a half-dozen others wore their crisp white doctor's coats, stethoscopes draped around their necks. Rashad and his legal colleagues were in immaculate dark suits that bespoke power and authority. Tamika wore her chef's whites, embroidered with the logo of her famous restaurant. The pilot stood tall in his full uniform, his hat tucked under his arm. They stood in silent, orderly rows. Each of them held a simple, professionally printed sign. The signs didn't carry slogans of anger. They carried statements of fact. Dr. Imani Wade, pediatrician, Grace's daughter for 36 years. Rashad Vance, Esquire, attorney at law, Grace's son for 34 years. Tamika Price, chef and owner, Grace's daughter for 28 years. On and on it went, a silent, irrefutable army of accomplishment. The neighbors were out, but not in a nosy, gossipy way. They stood on their porches, phones out, recording not with glee, but with a sense of awe. They were witnessing something profound, a community rising to protect its matriarch. At exactly 9:55, Latrina's white Lexus turned onto the street. The driver tapped the brakes, the car slowing to a crawl as she took in the scene. The sheer number of luxury cars forced her to a stop. She had to park 3 blocks away. I watched from my front window as she got out. She started walking with her usual confident, purposeful stride. But as she got closer, as the scale of the gathering became clear, her pace slowed. Her confident walk faltered, becoming a hesitant, uncertain shuffle. The moving truck that was following her pulled up to the end of the block and stopped, the driver leaning out of the window, scratching his head in utter confusion. Latrina and her parents, who looked pale and shaken, finally reached the edge of my property. They stopped dead in their tracks. They were met by a silent, unmoving wall, a wall of success, a wall of love, a wall of righteous anger. No one said a word. No one moved a muscle. They just stood there, over 60 strong, their presence a quiet, thundering roar that said more than any shout ever could. They were the family she had tried to erase, and they were here to be counted. Rashad took one slow step forward, separating himself from the silent group. He wasn't aggressive, not in the way a lesser man would be. His power was in his stillness, in the perfect cut of his suit that probably cost more than Latrina's car, and in the absolute, unshakable confidence in his eyes. "You must be Latrina," he said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the morning air, clear and cold as ice. Latrina flinched. She stared at the sea of faces, her own face a mess of confusion and dawning horror. What is all this? Who are you people?" she stammered. Imani stepped up to stand beside Rashad, her white doctor's coat looking like a suit of armor. "We," she said, her voice sharp and precise, "are her family. The one you decided didn't count." Then, one by one, they began to speak. It wasn't a chorus of shouts, but a calm, deliberate roll call of success, a verbal testament to my legacy. Michael Carter, City Council, Grace's son for 30 years. Dr. Marcus Cole, surgeon, Grace's son for 28 years. Aisha Ramsey, news anchor, Grace's daughter for 32 years. On and on it went, each name, each title, each declaration of belonging landing like a hammer blow. It was not an attack. It was a statement of fact, a living, breathing balance sheet of my life's work, and it was rendering Latrina bankrupt. "You see, Mrs. Harris," Rashad continued, his voice still low and even, "you made a critical miscalculation. You thought you were trying to evict one elderly woman from a piece of property. What you were actually doing was trying to rip the heart out of this community. You were trying to dispose of the woman who built every single one of us. This is a private family matter," Latrina whispered, the words sounding weak and pathetic even to my own ears. The airline pilot standing in the front row gave a short, humorless laugh. "You are absolutely right," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "It is a family matter, and this family has reached a unanimous decision. Our mother stays right where she is." The finality in his voice was absolute. Latrina's father, Clarence, a man who had looked merely uncomfortable before, now looked utterly broken. He finally looked past the crowd of strangers and met my eyes as I stepped out onto my porch. The truth dawned on his face, the full scale of his daughter's deception and cruelty. "She told us you were all alone," he mouthed, his expression one of profound shame. As if on cue, the driver of the moving truck, tired of waiting, leaned out of his cab and yelled down the street, "Ma'am! Hey, ma'am! You want us to start loading or what?" Every single eye on that lawn, my children's, my neighbors', Latrina's own parents', swiveled to her. The silence was deafening. She was trapped, exposed, and utterly defeated. Crushed under the weight of the family she never saw, she finally broke. Her shoulders slumped, and she whispered, her voice barely audible, "Cancel it, just cancel everything." The story didn't just spread through the neighborhood, it exploded onto the internet. Someone had been live streaming the entire showdown. By noon, the hashtag Grace's Village was the #1 trending topic on Twitter in Atlanta. The videos of my children standing on the lawn, of Latrina's face crumpling in defeat, were everywhere. The consequences for her were swift and brutal. The first blow came that afternoon. Mr. Henderson, the owner of a large construction firm and the man who had been my late husband's best friend, had taken Andre under his wing and given Latrina a high-paying marketing job as a family favor. He called her. She took the call in her car, and Andre later told me he could hear Mr. Henderson's booming voice, even through the closed windows. "You have brought shame to this family's name," he roared. "Clean out your desk. You're done." The second blow came from the church. Reverend Wallace called Latrina's father. He was polite, but firm. The Zion Hope Baptist Church Board, after seeing the video and hearing from 30 members of the Bible study group, had decided to go in a different direction for the new fellowship hall renovation. The contract, which would have been worth $250,000 to Clarence's company, was terminated. The final personal blow came that night. Andre came home to me. He didn't even go back to the house he shared with Latrina. He walked in with a single overnight bag, his face etched with a grief so deep it looked like it had aged him 10 years. "I don't know who that woman is, Mama," he said, his voice cracking. "I can't live with a person capable of that kind of cruelty." He filed for divorce the following month. Latrina became a pariah in the tight-knit Black community of Atlanta. Invitations to social events stopped. Friends who had once flocked to her parties now crossed the street to avoid her. Her own parents, unable to withstand the shame and the collapse of their social and business standing, quietly put their house on the market. Within 3 months, they had moved to a retirement community in Florida, seeking anonymity. While her world was imploding, mine was blooming. An anonymous donation of $150,000 arrived at the community center where I ran the after-school reading program, with a note that simply said, "For the work of Mama Grace and her village." And a week after the showdown, a social worker came to my house, reviewed my case, and officially signed the papers that made me the legal guardian of little Deshawn from next door. His mother cried with relief, knowing her son would always have a safe and loving home. 6 months passed. The seasons turned, and a quiet rhythm returned to my life, now fuller and richer than before. Then one evening, there was a soft knock on my door. I opened it to find a woman who looked like a ghost of my former daughter-in-law. It was Latrina, but not the Latrina I knew. The expensive suit was gone, replaced by simple jeans and a sweater. Her hair wasn't perfectly styled, and she wore no makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. The arrogance that had been her armor was gone, leaving only a raw, painful vulnerability. "I was wrong," she said, her voice quiet and hoarse. There were no tricks, no performance. The words came from a place of genuine brokenness. "I was so wrong about everything. I don't expect it. I don't deserve it. But I have to ask, is there any chance that any of you, could ever forgive me?" I looked at her, and I saw what I had seen in so many lost children over the years, someone who had taken a terrible wrong turn and didn't know how to find her way back. "Forgiveness isn't a light switch you can just flip, child," I told her gently. "It's a road, a long, hard road. The question is, are you ready to start walking it?" Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded, and she began to walk. She started therapy. She got a job working the intake desk at a women's shelter on the other side of town, a world away from her old life. She wrote a personal, handwritten letter of apology to every single member of the Zion Hope Bible Study Group, not asking for anything, just stating her shame. Slowly, cautiously, Andre agreed to see a marriage counselor with her. For the first time, she didn't try to dominate the conversation. She just listened. A year after that awful Friday, my house was filled for our annual Christmas dinner. It was loud and chaotic and full of love. All the children who lived in town were there, along with their own families. In the kitchen, helping Tamika pull a pan of cornbread from the oven, was Latrina. She didn't command attention or try to insert herself into conversations. She just quietly helped, washing dishes, refilling glasses, her presence a humble, gentle hum in the background. Imani came and stood beside me, watching her. "I see it, Mama Grace," she whispered. "She's really trying." I looked around the room, at the sprawling, beautiful, complicated family that filled my home. I saw Andre in the corner talking to Latrina, a small, tentative smile on his face. My heart was full. I had always known that family wasn't about the blood that runs through your veins. It's about the love that fills your heart. It's about loyalty. It's about who shows up with their hearts and hands open when the storm comes to your door.